We are now approaching one of the sites that Roland has been rehabilitating that was logged this past February 1997, and we're going to be coming up and walking the land to show you what reforestry looks like. You see it now in its barren, cut, most undesirable state, and soon you'll see what can be done and what is being done throughout Canada to rehabilitate this and to control its forestation.
This is a Douglas fir that was planted in February of 1997 in this entire area. And there's a very healthy growth, very healthy tree. We're about half of that side. This is the new growth at the top.
How long will that take to become
A mature trees?
Yes.
This will be a mature tree of about this size in 75 years. This size in 150 years.
And when will be the next time they decide to harvest it? You don't know.
Your guess is as good as mine.
I see.
They won't. But 75 years to reach a maturity.
Right.
Here we have a healthy tree too. It's doing very well. Good growth at the top. Same thing here.
And these are about 3 meters apart, is that so?
The trees are spaced at 3 meters apart with a density of approximately 500 trees per acre. That's the desired density. So,
yep.
To create an ideal forest, to take into account survival, these trees will be subjected to competition from vegetation, from deer browsing. The deer are very fond of some of these trees, particularly the cedar trees, and they come around and they feed on the bud of the tree.
Yes.
So, out of 500 trees per acre that are planted, hopefully we'll get a forest with about 300 of mature trees at this spacing.
Yes.
So there'll be a natural culling and weeding of the seedlings. After about 15 to 20 years, there will be a what we call a juvenile spacing process, where we come in and we eliminate the weak trees to give more room for the real healthy trees to grow and to compete for sunlight.
Yes.
So that photosynthesis can really be stimulated.
Right.
And the growth can be accelerated.
Right. Do you have any soil management to deal with over the next 5 to 10 years?
No, just the general breakdown of the organic humus layer. These trees have been fertilized, I believe. What we use is a tea bag. Let me see. I think only cedar was fertilized here. I'll show you the root of the tree if you want to take a closer look here. See, these trees are grown in nurseries with a plug. So I'm sacrificing this poor baby. So when we plant the trees, about this size, is 3 months old, grown in nurseries, and this is what we call a container stock. It's a plug type. A plug of peat and dirt and soil, and the trees are grown in containers and shipped in bundles of 15 trees wrapped in a cellophane wrapping paper in boxes. So in this case, we've flown the trees in from the nearest town, which is 25-minute plane ride away, to the dock. And then we truck them here, and then the planters load up and they cover the ground. We divide up the ground in specific areas, and we mix 3 or 4 species. In this case, Douglas fir, some spruce in the wet areas, cedar, and I believe some hemlock.
Mm-hmm. So how many trees will be planted in this particular job?
In this particular block, where we have 2 blocks, a smaller block further up the hill, in this area we have approximately 104,000 trees planted here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that was done in February of '97.
Mm-hmm.
And the crew was flown in every morning with a float plane.
Yes.
Some days we couldn't work because we couldn't fly. There were some real storms.
Mm-hmm.
So we fly right from Alert Bay,
Yes.
across the islands, down to this bay.
It sure is gorgeous.
And we did have a incident one day where the crew was able to fly in the morning, and then we had a huge storm, and the crew was not able to fly back at night.
Oh boy.
So they seek refuge on a small floating camp
Mm-hmm.
that was shut down, but fortunately they were able to seek shelter for the night.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, I was trying to get a boat to come down and rescue the crew, but they managed to make radio contact with me, and were able to stay here for the night. So
Yes.
we deal with some very wild elements,
Yeah, I'm sure.
particularly in the wintertime on this coast.
You know, the rest of the land looks so beautiful and green around this gorgeous lake, this body of water.
It's the ocean.
Straight.
The Pacific Ocean, my dear.
Pacific, right. It doesn't look like an ocean from here, but
It sure is, believe me.
but this is are we in a bight here?
Are we?
This- or is this a straight off the ocean?
This is a channel of water which is adjacent to Blackfish Sound
Yes.
through Baronet Passage.
Right.
There's many fjords and many bodies of water just converging, and this coast is very rugged with thousands of islands and inlets. And
Yes. So, as a New Yorker, you understand that I didn't look out here and see the Pacific Ocean. But nonetheless.
call it the Pacific Lake.
But when we look at this, Roland, at the what looks like to the naked eye devastation of beautiful land, we can only thank you for the work you're doing to rehabilitate it by putting forth these shoots to bring back the beautiful green that really needs to be here.
Over 75 years.
Mm-hmm. It's not quick.
It's very long term.
How can we go quicker?
Well, we can spend a lot more money in research and development. We can work at developing genetically superior seedlings.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't done a whole lot of research on the subject, and we need to concentrate a lot of effort in faster, quicker renewal of resources.
Right. But as it stands, the legislation, especially in Canada, you were saying earlier, has gotten very stringent.
In British
So-
Columbia,
In British Columbia.
each province has different sets of regulations
Mm-hmm.
regarding harvesting and utilization of the resources.
Mm-hmm. And so, for companies to fell old growth, is what are they up against?
Logging today is far more regulated than ever was, and the main changes are basically the size of clear cuts. Up until 10 to 12 years ago, we were dealing with clear cuts of 100, 200, 300 hectares. Of course, you go by acres, so double that by 2.2, so 200, 500, 600, 700 acres, which are very, very large openings, very, very large openings. A forest, which is a very vulnerable situation. Erosion, with this climate, heavy
Yes.
rainfalls all winter, erosion is a big problem. If the slopes are very steep, you destabilize slopes by opening so much ground, exposed to high winds, to to storms from Japan to
Mm,
incredible elements.
sure.
So basically you're creating a set of factors contributing to slides and to very, very serious erosion, particularly at high elevation. Erosion is practically irreversible in high elevation. Here we're very low, we're right by sea level.
Mm-hmm.
It's much easier to recover from scarring of the ground this way.
Right.
So one of the main changes is that the size of the clear cut has been reduced to approximately 50 to 70 acres, as opposed to 500 to 700 acres.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And the change in environmental impact then is what?
well, the change is, first of all, that to be able to declare an area appropriate for logging, you have to guarantee by doing all kinds of pre-harvesting plans and a lot of projection regarding erosion potential and disturbance and so on and so forth. You're protecting the area from erosion. You do not touch sensitive areas. You do not log in very steep slopes. You do not expose the ground the way it used to be exposed. And you really minimize the impact of the clear cuts.
Mm-hmm.
We have to deal with clear cuts because there's a huge demand for wood products. And our economy relies on clear cuts, relies on the forest industry a great deal.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to find a compromise. So you have to reconcile the existence of wildlife and recognize its existence and manage and monitor its existence and survival. And you have to recognize the utilization of forest for purposes other than harvesting the resources. And being very, very careful about where you cut.
Right.
You got to be able to cut in an area where the growth is going to be really optimum.
As a long-time environmentalist, have you always endorsed the idea of controlled clear cutting?
No.
How did you feel, and what was your point of view before you have the one you've got now?
I was very much opposed to large clear cuts. I just wanted to explain something about clear cutting. Clear cutting was developed at the turn of the century. Clear cutting is a method of harvesting which resulted from the method of transporting the wood that we had 75, 80, 90, 100 years ago, where we use trains. We build railroad tracks in valleys, at the bottom of valleys. And we harvested everything on the sides of the valley for practical purposes, so we could simply cut the wood and yard the wood and load it onto trains and haul it off. So it was a very simple, practical approach. So because of the labor intensive and the cost of building railroad tracks, we start to cut huge areas because it was a lot more practical. It justified the investment of building railroads. So we started deforesting these enormous areas. And then in the mid-20s or late 20s, where the diesel engine was developed and invented, suddenly there was an opportunity to move wood with logging trucks and really revert to small clear cuts, because now we got away from the mode of transportation of the wood, which was the railroad, to a much more mobile and efficient and versatile method, which was the logging truck.
Right.
But of course, the people harvesting at the time realized that profits were enormous using logging trucks, which were cheaper to operate, and still maintain these huge clear cuts for years and years and years. So the profits generated from the forest harvesting were enormous. And we, the governments at the time, really failed to recognize the importance of the change and the incredible damage to the environment. Of course, the concept at the time was that we have an abundance of resources which were absolutely unlimited. No one thought would ever run out because the forests of British Columbia are so abundant and plentiful.
Nor did anyone think about ecosystems at large.
No, not at all, because this was vastly untouched, uninhabited
Virgin
virgin territory, which
Yeah.
which no one had any desire to live in or live around or so on. So we really ignored the impact of our harvesting methods for a long time.
Yes.
So my shift in belief, first of all, resulted from the fact that in this province, our economy, 50% of our economy is driven by the forest sector. Primary and secondary layers of the economies. We have to recognize that that's what drives our livelihoods. We have to recognize that we have a very significant need for wood. We have a huge demand for wood products from the US, from Western Europe, from Korea, from Japan, for building material. We are foolish to ignore the fact that we have resources and a huge demand. We cannot shut it down. We cannot shut it down. We have to deal with finding a compromise between servicing the needs, reducing the needs, servicing the needs, and servicing the harvesting practices.
So you are in favor of reducing the need for wood products?
Absolutely. Consumption is an enormous problem. We consume at a fierce rate, and we have to educate the public at large as to the consequences of our consumption habits.
Would you say that what you're doing, Roland, is helping to manage the forests in a way so that there's less reliance of the logging industry on old growth and more focus and emphasis put on farming,
Yes.
as it were?
Yes, definitely. I mean, some old growth needs to be managed. We have trees reach a stage of maturity which borders on decay. We have to find a way to manage wood that is getting older, that is aging.
Yes.
Being very careful about leaving enough surrounding patron trees, blueprint forest, to be able to reproduce the complexity of the ecosystem when we do harvest. Small scale clear cuts do work. Selective harvesting works very well in flat, relatively flat terrain. There's many examples of it, but its use is very limited on this very drastic coastline where the landscape is very dramatic and steep and harsh and so on.
So your feeling is that controlled and limited clear cuts are a very reasonable compromise between being environmentally conscious and preserving and providing the marketplace with at least some wood products that it is
Yes.
always seemingly
Yes.
fiercely demanding.
Yes, I do.
Do you see other alternatives as well?
As far as tree farming is
Yes.
concerned,
Or providing wood or wood-like products to the marketplace that seems so voracious for them?
well, one of the alternatives for pulp and paper products is what I showed you in Campbell River, which is the whole poplar concept. Basically, opening large areas, plowing areas, planting fast-growing poplars, which take 10 years to grow, 5, 6, 7 feet a year, and harvesting them every 10 years. That provides a source of pulp that's very, very adequate, and literally farming the trees. It's an excellent alternative.
Yes.
It's a very reasonable alternative to utilizing old growth as a sort of pulp and paper products.
How about an alternative to wood altogether? but wood-like products,
Hemp.
for instance.
Hemp could be
And
planted in these fields, I suppose.
it could be.
It could be.
Hmm. I mean, in your years of involvement with this, do you know of other reasonable alternatives?
To wood products.
Yes.
Plastic,
Mm-hmm.
metal.
Mm-hmm.
Construction uses more and more metal 2x4s.
So these are realistic
I think so.
alternatives
yes.
to
Yes.
at least some extent.
And once again, these are areas which deserve a very significant amount of research and experiment to come up with an alternative. We cannot continue to harvest. From a universal and global point of view, we cannot continue to harvest at the rate at which we are harvesting our resources in the forest industry, in the mining industry, in the fishing industry. We cannot sustain the level of harvesting that we've grown accustomed to.
Yes.
We have to do a very, very serious amount of soul searching as to what we consume and the amount that we consume.
That's for sure. What is it that you would like to let the New York and American audience know from these high points in British Columbia where you so happily live and do your work? I'm sure you've got a central message that you would like to broadcast to all those that are watching this show. What would that be?
The Blue Jays will win the World Series again.
Yeah.
We'll stop the Yankees. No, my main concern, frankly, is the consumption. Our consuming habits are frightening.
Mm-hmm.
We have population growth that is phenomenally rapidly expanding. Where every 6 to 8 years we will be having to feed an additional billion people on the earth. Our resources are limited. We absolutely need to be very, very careful about our consumption in terms of hydroelectricity in our homes, in terms of our paper product utilization, in terms of our computer paper, fax paper, printing paper. We have to be very, very careful. Packaging, we have to do something about the packaging. Packaging industry is an enormous consumer of pulp and paper products.
So how can we out here in the audience respond to this cry of the wilderness for help, for ecological, humane assistance?
Take a very good look at what you do utilize in your home in terms of wood-related products, in buildings and in general consumption. Go for the recycled products as much as possible, and really reduce and limit and conserve your utilization of paper products.
Wonderful. Roland Emery, thank you very much. Really greatly appreciate your extraordinary work and commitment to the environment and the practical solutions that you have come up with to bridge the traditional ways with the needs pressing upon us now as a contemporary growing society.
To the trees.
So, here we are in beautiful, magnificent British Columbia with one of the leading environmentalists up here. Not an environmentalist always in the sense that you may think with the work of Greenpeace and others, but a man who has been up in these mountains by this ocean for many years, doing what he can to create a means by which people who have been part of this world up here for virtually decades, if not centuries, working with them in a way to come up with an ecologically balanced compromise, to work out a situation in which some logging can be done under very specific conditions that respects the ecological balance of the place with the needs of a driving, hungry marketplace. And that's where we come in. Roland is here doing his job, trying to manage in such a way that old growth is virtually left alone, as it can be, and managing and farming forests reasonably so that some wood products can be generated. Now it's really up to us, and to look at very carefully what our consumption is in the domain of wood products, whether it's paper, as Roland was saying, or shingles on our house, or wood decks, or what have you, wood for burning. So let's enjoy the fact that Roland and people like him are up in these very distant places working truly on our behalf to protect what it is we've got, protect the oxygen on the planet, and actually even increase it from the older ways that were prevalent until relatively recently. This is Mitchell J. Rabin on location in British Columbia. We're very glad that you've joined us again today. Please give me a call at 212-420-0800. We're very glad that you've joined us again today, and we look forward to seeing you all next week.